When you're on a bike in the elements, you feel everything. You feel the wind, you hear the noise, you hear the crack of the road as you ride over pebbles, and you see the world at a more human pace.
Tim Pickett is the toughest cyclist I know. He can ride consecutive 100-milers for weeks at a time, and that's on a fully loaded touring bike.
I have a good idea when I take on these challenges about what to expect, but I choose not to look at it because it's the discovering about what's around the corner. It could either be good or it could be difficult. But when you're in that discovery mode, it's exciting.
Tim's tackled some beastie rides and recently cycled the Pan American Highway, famed as being the longest road in the world. It was a journey of over 15,000 miles, which took Tim nearly 6 months, all by himself on his bike. Many people his age might consider a less strenuous form of transport.
Just because you're in your 50s doesn't mean you can't do it. I think it's more of a reason to do it, actually.
Tim's talents of riding big miles are even more impressive when you learn that he only discovered cycling in his 40s, something he actually credits to saving his life. That's because Tim is a survivor of child abuse. And throughout his life, Tim has battled with suicidal depression, PTSD, and has never valued or appreciated his own self-worth. He even admits that he wanted his latest ride to end him.
It was just a one-way journey. It was the start of a new life to push myself and end it. Just finish doing something massive.
This conversation is not just a story of Tim's epic ride with many tales from the road, but it's also a story of survival, of processing trauma through physical exertion, and ultimately how to find self-respect when you've spent so much of your life thinking you don't have any worth at all.
Having people say, well, you're inspiring what you're doing, it's great. That meant something. And it sort of empowers you. It empowers you with yourself about who you are and what you mean to others. Although you might have very little self-respect for yourself, other people respect what you do.
That's all coming up on episode 3 of Great British Adventures. I think people, when they hear about your story, will wonder, like, why is someone in their 50s, or shouldn't someone in their 50s be taking an RV around the world, not cycling around it on their bike?
Yeah, that they're perfectly entitled to do that, but I prefer to cycle. Keeps me fit, keeps me focused, and it's more of an adventure.
There must be something about being out in the environment you're traveling through.
Freedom. If you're in an RV or vehicle of any kind, it's air conditioned, it's warm, or cold, however you want it. When you're on a bike in the elements, you feel everything. You feel the wind, you hear the noise, you hear the crack of the road as you ride over pebbles, and you experience all the elements. And when it rains, you get wet. And when it's hot, you sunburn, so it's more real and it makes you feel more alive.
Well, you've come here to talk about one of your big cycling adventures you've just finished. Yeah. And I imagine from the experience that I've had from much shorter journeys that there's so much to decompress from being out on the road, from being out in the elements, from exerting yourself physically every day, continuously. You've done an adventure that took months. How is your mind now that you've finished in the last month or so?
It feels surreal in that, I finished on the January the 14th was my last day on the bike. And since then, it's re-engaging with lots of people in crowded places. I've been on my own, isolated, doing everything for myself. And I'm just going back through stuff, looking at photographs and looking at what I've written and the people I've met and remembering things. I go to sleep at night and all of a sudden it's a bit like a light bulb. Oh yeah, I went there. I met this person. Oh, I saw this. Or I climbed that mountain. So it's still decompressing with all of that. And the physicality of what I took on, I underestimated how long it would take me to recoup. I thought, well, I've finished that. I'll have a couple of days off, I'll go ride again. But when you make the decision to stop, your body starts to go, I need to rest now. So it's taken a few weeks and I'm just starting to get back into riding my 40 or 50 milers and coming back to some sort of, I suppose, societal normality, which isn't in some ways normal for me at the moment.
Yeah. What you've done is very extreme as well. So I think many people can relate to pushing their body beyond and out further out their comfort zone. Let's say they're training for a marathon, they run the marathon. The next day, they don't want to run.
No.
The next day after that, they don't want to think about running for the next week.
Yeah.
They've done their bits. And then slowly, if they want to, they'll get back out gently, running a little bit more, seeing where their body is. Maybe it's not right time and they'll come back and rest again. What you've done is not just physicality on your body, but also on your mind as well.
Yeah.
And it was so extreme that I imagine it's not just a case of just taking a week off or two. It's this is months of decompression.
It is.
The longer you're out there, the longer you need
to unwind and find your feet. I think if I go back to the very start of the ride, I always thought that August the 1st, the day I started riding, wasn't just about a ride, it was the start of a new life. And the objective to finish the ride was about self-respect. So for me, it wasn't just about the endurance or the mental, well, there was the endurance, but the mental aspect was to say, this is what you can do, and prove your self-worth. And mentally, that is incredibly tough, because it's not just the getting up every day, day after day after day. It's telling yourself you're worth it to actually get up and do it. So the mental side of things, I think, was probably more tough for me than the physicality. I think as you go on, I always think, I've done long rides before, but nothing like this, nothing on this scale. And I always say that the first week is the hardest, because once you've got past the first week, then you can get into a routine. You've got your week on the bike. You sort of know what you do. You look at the bike, you look at how down to the detail about which sock you put on first. Do you put your left on first or your right on first? And you get into a pattern. Then it's sort of organized chaos in some ways. So that becomes your norm, getting up every day and getting on. But it's the mental fatigue that's really tough. Conquering the things that tell you what you shouldn't be doing or what you don't think you can do. Then you have to sort of put that in a box and say, right, I've got a job to do today. And once you start riding, once you get in for a few miles, those little bits of demons will sort of hide away for a while.
And your experience on previous tours, do you think that kind of helped?
Yeah, definitely.
The things you were talking about this earlier to me, you've crossed Route 66, which took you
3 weeks.
3 weeks, which is roughly how many miles a day?
That's just over 100 miles a day.
That was back in 2013.
Yep.
Since then, did you do anything else?
Yep. I've been across Australia, which was Perth to Sydney. So that was across the Nullarbor Plain. So that was 3 weeks from Perth to Bondi Beach. And that was interesting. That was meeting a whole array of people and wildlife, dingoes, kangaroos, camels, emus, road trains. But again, that really sort of taught me a few bits about survival and not fearing too much about the snakes and the spiders.
Because that's what we hear about over here, is the dangers.
The biggest danger in Australia were the road trains. And the advice I was given is if you see a road train in front of you coming towards you, get off the road, because the traffic behind you will be swerving onto the hard shoulder to avoid the road train. Best advice I've had. Because they need space and they're hurtling along at 60, 70 miles an hour on just single carriageways.
And you're just a speck on their windscreen.
They wouldn't even know they'd hit you. So out of respect for the truck drivers, you get off the road because they've got a job to do. So respect works two ways.
Sure. Yeah, that's important on the roads, I suppose, when you're on a bike.
Particularly, yeah.
So a 3-week journey.
Yep.
Had you gone any longer?
Yep. The 2019, I went from Prudhoe Bay down to Mexico City.
So this is a similar journey to what you've just undertaken, but a shortened version.
Yes. I wanted to see how hard I could push myself in 2019. I'd always wanted to do the Pan America, I think, really, but I've just never had the time to do it. And in 2019, I benchmarked myself against the unsupported world record holder, who is a man called Jonas Deichmann. And in 2018, he went and set a record for the Pan America, which was 97 and a half days from Prudhoe Bay to Ushuaia.
This was 23,000 kilometers.
Yep. And
the top of North America to the very bottom of South.
That's right. And he averaged 140 miles a day. And I just went from Prudhoe Bay to Mexico City, which was 5,500 miles. And I averaged 126 miles a day, which was tough. I couldn't push any harder than that.
So what was your purpose? Were you trying to replicate what he could do, to see where...
I just wanted to see how hard I could go, how fast I could go.
So where your limits were?
Where my limits were, yeah. And unsupported. No vans following me, no one along the way, nothing. Just me and the bike and the road and seeing how hard I could go.
So how long did that journey take in time?
That was, I think about 45 days, maybe.
Okay, so just over 6 weeks.
Going
twice as long as probably the tours that you're used to doing.
Yeah, it was twice as far. But I found as I was going, I could get faster and faster and faster.
Was your body just clicking into place?
Yeah. And at the end of that, because my mindset was to finish in Mexico City, that was the point of when the body said, right, enough's enough. And it's funny, the ride into Mexico, because the last day I always try and do a short ride in to make sure that I enjoy the last day. So it was only 80 miles. It wasn't too far. And that's when the bike started to get tired. I had a very slow puncher. So it was basically saying, take your time. So I didn't change the puncher. Just kept stopping every so often, pumping it up, getting to the right pressure. And then the chain started falling off. And what happened was I met probably about 4 or 5 cyclists. There was a dad and his brother and a friend and a son. And they cycled with me for about 15 miles. And it was just nice to have that camaraderie and friendship.
Yeah.
And that was a really meaningful day. So it made the end. It was fate. It's fate that my bike was going wrong or getting tired.
There is something, I think, to be said about when you reach the end of your journey, that your body starts to kind of realize what's going on. Your mind is knowing what's going on. So you've been able to hold yourself together for so long. But as soon as you know that the finish line is in sight, it's almost like it gives your body permission to say, okay, I can stop now.
Yeah.
And it might be that last day when it's actually like, okay, I'll get you to the end, but that's all I'm giving you, and there'll be nothing more.
Absolutely spot on.
And it's almost like the bike sometimes is in sync with you, which has happened to me on the last, when I toured across France, came into the long promenade into Nice, and the gearing on my back derailleur broke, stuck me in a hard gear, and I had no more hills left. So it was like, okay, I've done my job. Now I'm going to make it hard work for you to finish.
Absolutely right. But it's how you deal with things like that. You got 2 choices. You either stop and give up, or you just think, I'll work with what I've got. And you work with what you've got. And you carry on, because otherwise you wouldn't fulfill what you set out to do. And my body I was still buzzing with adrenaline. I got my photograph done because I needed a photograph. I was on my own. There was no one there at the end. So just me and my bike. And that was good. And then I went and found a beer, because I never drink when I'm training, never touch alcohol. I'm focused. But at the end of it, I always have 2 beers. This time I had 3, but generally I have 2. I always have one for me and one for my late brother, and so he's always there.
Yeah.
And we do that.
A great way to finish.
And got to Mexico City Airport 6 hours before I needed to, because I just wanted to feel as I was getting back now. And I was first in the line for the check-in, sorry. And 2 people behind me came up, and they were early 70s, Pat and Carlos. And I fainted. And that was the time my body gave up. Just ready to get back.
Wow.
And Pat went into rescue mode, said, Carlos, go get the Mars bars and the coffee, and I'll look after him. And they became friends ever since.
You'd never met these people?
Never met them before. And I stayed with them on this latest journey. I grew up in Patcham, in Carden Avenue, and Pat lived about half a mile away when she was a young girl, up the road. And I meet her 40 or 50 years later from where she grew up. And she saved me at Mexico Airport.
Crazy. The world is a small place, right?
Absolutely. And they've become great friends. Pat and Carlos are now my big brother and big sister. And that's fantastic.
And did you return to these on
I stayed with them for 3 days.
Yeah.
And they're coming over later this year. And I'm taking them away for a few days to say thank you.
It all comes full circle.
It does.
And it's just the kindness of strangers sometimes. It's what it takes.
You can't make it up. Could not make it up. And the kindness was fantastic.
You talked about how you, in 2019, you wanted to push yourself to the limits and see how far you could go. Why did you choose to really push yourself on a long bike ride on your own? What was the deeper purpose behind that?
I think being unsupported, you've only got one person to rely on, and that's yourself. If you're in the middle of a desert and something goes wrong, who's going to help you? And I was trying to prove to myself resilience. And this stems back a long time to historical events in my life that sort of left me feeling on my own a lot. And when I've done things with other people, they've sort of generally not understood why I push so hard. And it's been unfair on them to sort of expect that they can keep up or do what I can do, because I've always had to push myself and to sort of say, look, I'm good at what I can do, but I've never really accepted it. I've never really accepted that I can ride day after day after day. And I really only discovered that when my younger brother died, because he died of pancreatic cancer. And when we were younger, he witnessed the abuse that I went through. He witnessed me being raped by a man, and he was 11 years old. And I think that, it did. We never spoke about it.
How old were you?
I was 13. And we were always very close, but we never spoke about it. And I think the silence is a killer. And when he died, it was a very significant part. I think there was a changing point for me, really, because that was the start. I was 45, and that was the start of my big rides.
So decades had passed.
Yeah. I mean, I've ridden the South Downs Way a fair few times to help people. Friends' wife got breast cancer. I rode the South Downs Way for breast cancer care. But when Mark died, I rode for cancer research because it was pancreatic cancer that killed him, which was pretty much, with drinking as well. I mean, very, very bright man, very bright man. And he worked for an American company, would fly to Chicago a lot. And that's where the Route 66 comes from. And I said to him, well, you stay focused. I'll ride across France and up Alpe d'Huez, and you're my support vehicle. But he died in February, and I cycled in the September. So I went across France with the kind assistance of my friend Pete. And we did that in about 6 days from Roscoff to Alpe d'Huez on an old mountain bike. And when I got back, the first thing I saw on TV was Billy Connolly in his Route 66. And for me, that was Mark saying, well, you've had a little warm-up, off to Chicago. So 2 years later, I was off to Chicago. And I think 66 for me was the start of saying, you can really bash these miles out. And then once I'd finished that, I started getting twitchy again for the next one. And then Australia came up. Then my mind started going to bigger things, bigger countries, and the Pan America Highway is the longest interconnected road in the world. I mean, I did think about going around the world, but I thought, no, I want to do the Pan America. Started investigating that. Then I came across Jonas and what he'd done. And I thought, well, how far can I really push myself? But in the ensuing time of all of that, in 2017, I rang the Samaritans and said I'd had enough. And then I reported my crime. I had an interview where it was the first time that I had ever verbalized what had happened to me. And that was really tough. I felt as though a weight had been lifted.
It must have taken a lot of strength to kind of get to that point.
Very difficult. Very difficult.
What got you to that point? Was the people around you supporting you?
No. That was just me tired of being suicidal. I didn't have any help or support in getting there. And that's not a criticism, it's just, if someone suddenly turns around to you and said, this has happened, how do they cope with it as much as you've been coping with it all your life? So I was pretty much all on my own trying to get that organised and dealt with. And it was very cathartic in some ways doing the police interview and verbalising what had happened. That was the first time I'd ever verbalised it. Mark died because he couldn't verbalise it. And at that point I thought, I need to go and do something else. And that was the start of saying, I need to do another ride. I need to stay strong, get something done. The court cases take ages of anything of that nature to gather evidence and get witnesses together and stuff. So it's quite a long process. So I thought, well, the bike keeps me sane. So I just got into training. And I didn't feel ashamed this time to raise money for abused children, because I'd always hidden behind the fact my brother had died of cancer and raised money for cancer research. But I felt a bit more empowered to raise money for abused kids, because I was quite prepared to say, this is what's happened to me and my little brother. So the next one was written for cancer research and for the NSPCC. And then subsequent to that, the court case was taking ages and ages. The man was still alive that had committed the crime. He was 82 when he did get convicted, but he was pleading dementia, couldn't remember anything. So then he knew how to play the game. He was a serial paedophile. So
a lot of would have been continuing in your head, in your mind.
All the time.
And so the bike was a way for you to just
detach myself,
escape from this for an hour or so at a time, just to
absolutely just focus on me, the road, the bike, and staying fit.
And it must have kept your mind more healthy as well.
It keeps you healthy, because you not only do you get fit, but you get the endorphin buzz. You run, you think, crikey, I just rode up that hill. And for me, that's a saviour. Cycling it saved my life. Really, really saved my life.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I ride for my life. I ride to save, ride to be healthy, ride to be sane, even though some of the rides I do are a little bit extreme.
But this helps kind of explain why someone would kind of give up so much time to spend on their bike because you actually owe your bike almost as much.
That and a friend.
This is your friend Den?
Den, yeah, mad banana. We went through the recession, didn't have any money, working 70, 80 hours, 90 hours a week for £40 a week. And he came upstairs and said, you need a day off. And he said, come out with me and the lads. I said, yeah, what's that? He said, we go mountain biking. And I was hugely cynical about it. And I said, yeah, all right. I said, bunch of pussies. And we started at Newmarket Hill on the A27. And I was there in my jeans, my T-shirt, my sweatshirt because it was winter.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a bike that was too small for me because it was his bike. Went out and did 20 miles. And I'd like to say that saved my life. Mentally.
Yeah.
And that's took a long time to find the outlet. But I think that's what's given me confidence throughout my life now. You know, being able to ride and do what I can do.
So looking back on that day, what do you really remember about feeling when you first took on that bike?
As soon as we left the car park and going up there, it was, oh, fuck. And I was wet and it started raining. I was in jeans that were too tight, but I thought, I'm not going to let this beat me. You know, I've just called them all a bunch of pussies. I can't not do this. So stuck with it for 20 miles. And they were all very impressed at the end of the 20 miles. I went straight back home and slept for about 6 hours. I was shot, absolutely shot. But I felt good. Nice. And that was the start of it. That was the start of all the rides. And then we go out regularly on a Sunday morning, 7 a.m. up on the downs. And it just became, it wasn't an addiction, it was a necessity. And there was times when I gave up the bike for maybe 12 months. I just couldn't face riding. But as time went on, and I just realised how important it was to stay fit and stay healthy. And it's just become part of who I am now, not what I do. You know, I'm a cyclist. You know, I'm an endurance cyclist. I can ride up hills. I can ride through countries. And it doesn't frighten me. It's great. The excitement of newness, of not knowing what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a good idea when I take on these challenges about what to expect, but I choose not to look at it because it's the discovering about what's around the corner. It could either be good or it could be difficult. But when you're in that discovery mode, it's exciting and it feeds the happiness, you know, feeds the wow, you know, look at this. When I was in Canada and I went around one corner, I just cycled around a corner. I thought, oh, here we go. And then I was just confronted with this huge hill. I thought, well, I've got two choices. I either go up it or I don't. So I just went up it slowly. And you get to the top and you feel fantastic. And you look back and you go, yep, got up that one. On to the next. It's great.
So 2021, we met. We crossed paths on our own little bike adventures. I was cycling the West Kernay Way with a friend around Cornwall. The beautiful sunshine in August.
Hale.
In Hale, outside Warren's Bakery.
Warren's Bakery, it was before August. It was 2021.
It must have been July.
Yeah, July. It was last year. It would have been July.
Yeah. Oh, because of course you started in August.
August, yeah. I was on a training day. I was doing 100 miles that day. And I saw you.
Which did you see first, me or the bike with my bike packing gear?
The bike. Yes. Sorry, Tom. It was the bike.
And your eyes widened telling me about the journey that you're about to go on.
Because most people don't believe it.
Or don't understand or process what that actually means.
Yeah.
Because they've not actually physically been there. They just see someone who comes back at the end of a journey and says, oh, well, you did it.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't just do it, though. It was...
I pushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, pushed.
There's a whole book I could write in the middle for that.
There's taking on a long bike ride, and there's different ways in which you can do it. You know, you can do it at a leisurely pace, which is great. You can spend time in places when you're cycling. I mean, towards the end of the ride I've just done, on the last day I met a young couple. I said, where did you leave from? They said, they were cycling the Pan America Highway. I said, how long have you been on the road? And they said, 6 years. Because they were stopping and exploring as they went. And that was fantastic. I mean, that was a lifestyle, 6 years.
Mm.
And when I said to them I'd been on the road for 5 months, their jaws nearly dropped on the floor and thought, really? And then they said, how old are you? You know, and it's quite, I find it quite funny, you know, when people sort of think, you know, just because you're in your 50s doesn't mean you can't do it. You know, I think it's more of a reason to do it, actually.
But you never knew how long it would be.
No, I
think initially you told me
I wanted to push.
Your vision, I suppose, because everyone has visions of what their adventure might look like, was to start at the very north coast of America, Prudhoe Bay, cycle through Central America, down to South America to the very bottom, to Ushuaia.
Yep.
And at the time, you told me that you wanted to also turn around and go back.
I was going to go back. I was going to do the return journey.
Which no one has ever done before.
No one's ever done before. There's a reason for that.
There's reasons for that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, realistically speaking, could I have done the return journey? Physically, I think if I'd have had a couple of weeks off in Ushuaia, I could have done the return journey. Mentally, I was not up to it. Yeah, I found my limit. Mentally, I'd found my limit. I could not do it. What would I would have struggled with would have been seeing the carnage again, and the day to day. When I say carnage, it's about life is cheap in Central America with the dogs and people and things. I could not cope with that. I found my limit on that. And then it became almost going one way became a metaphor for leaving things behind. Don't go back on yourself. Mm-hmm. Because if I'd have, what happened to me physically and mentally in my past, that's in the past. And to do a return journey would have been going back over my past because I'd been there before.
Yeah.
So it became a bit of a metaphor that one way was the right way. But I think the whole purpose of going back originally was to try and kill myself off. There's a big element of self-destruct still in me. I thought, right, I can do myself in doing this ride. This is it. I can do something, but it will finish me off. And it sort of got to a point in the ride I started to mentally think, yeah, I'm actually all right. I like who I am. I like being able to do this. And if I go back, I won't be able to do it anymore. There'll be no more Timosaurus. He will become extinct. I thought, no, I've got more to give yet. So the mental challenge became mental clarity as well, where I wanted to go and who I was and what I could do. And pushing myself as hard as I did and having people say, well, you're inspiring what you're doing. It's great. Or, I'd like to do it. Thank you. Wish you luck. That meant something. And it sort of empowers you. It empowers you with yourself about who you are and what it means, what you mean to others. Although you might have very little self-respect for yourself, other people respect what you do. And that was very cathartic and very healing. So leading a life by example and inspiring is a very, very rewarding thing to do. So I think going one way was the right way.
It almost takes yourself to push you further out your comfort zone, beyond what you perceive as your limits, to find out where you want to be comfortable.
Yeah. I thought I'd found my limit because, I'd suffered from sunstroke, food poisoning, hypothermia. And I got to a point probably 10 days before I thought, I'm ready to call this. I found my limit. I think because I was physically tired and mentally tired and I'd been hit by a truck. And I thought, this is getting dangerous. My luck's running out.
This is at the very end of your journey, wasn't
it? It was about 10 days before.
And I remember reading your blogs that you were writing. The day before, you were excited because the end was in sight. You were calculating how many days that would take you.
Yep.
It was almost if you had set in vision the steps that you needed to take to get to the end, which I suppose on a journey which lasts as long as the one that you've done, you try to not think about how you're going to finish because it's just too far beyond sight.
Absolutely.
But as soon as it becomes within smelling distance, then everything starts to click into place. And this happened just the day before you actually then got hit by a truck.
Yep.
It's almost poetic that your mentality had changed. You were very excited to be finishing, and then something just whacks you back into shape again. So hang on, no, we've not finished with the adventure yet.
Yeah, the nature hadn't finished with me. I think I'd been on the road. I'd been 90 miles of headwind, and I got to a gas station, and I thought, well, should I camp at the gas station or make a head for the other? Got to this gas station. It was pretty seedy, tacky, and disgusting. I thought, no, I'm going to push an extra sort of 30 miles. And then I left the gas station and got hit by the truck. And it was the day I wasn't wearing my helmet. And I always wear my helmet. And this was the one day I didn't. And it hit me 3 times. It got my forearm, then it got the top of my arm. I got the scars on the top here, where it cut me quite deeply. And then it hit me on the head. And I tell you what, it bloody hurts. Pulled over at the side of the road. No, at the time I didn't know I was concussed, and a couple pulled up behind me, and thankfully they did. I didn't want to cheat. I wanted to ride, and a voice in my head was saying, "Get the lift, get the lift." So we put 5150 in the back. Got to the next gas station, absolutely exhausted, and I was concussed. And the voice in my head was telling me, "Stay safe, get the lift." I did make the extra 30 miles up that I missed, by the way. And but you just try and process it and think, I can't be stopped now. But I did actually make a decision to call the ride. I thought, I'm going to ride until Sunday the 15th. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not there, come and get me. But as soon as I made that call to finish, the pressure was off.
You were within 1,000 miles at this point.
Yep.
But you knew that you needed to end it
Yep.
sooner than maybe you knew you could.
I think my luck was running out. I think being hit by the truck made me aware of my own vulnerabilities on the bike. Whether that was me being fatigued and too tired because I was going every day. But I generally felt my luck was running out. And I thought, if I stay with this, I'm probably not going to make it to the end. So I made the decision to call it.
So you had a friend
Of mine,
drop you near the actual very finish.
A friend of mine flown in. She took a sabbatical from work and said, "I'm not having you finish at the end with no one there to meet you." So she was down at Ushuaia, Jane, and that was great. And she was ready to get the hire car and come and get me if I needed it. And when I wasn't under pressure, I rode a lot better and a lot faster, thinking it didn't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, I was going to get to the end of the world. But I think me calling it was me accepting my limit. It was actually saying, yeah, I've reached my limit. But the 1,000 miles was beyond my limit, but I still managed to do it.
Which is a crazy way to think about it.
Yeah, but I knew I could do it. I didn't have any pressure on me anymore.
It almost gives a great lesson to those who go out on these adventures to know that sometimes you need to understand that it's not always about doing every single mile along the way to getting to the finish.
No.
It's so much more than that. The route that you have planned is purely by means of a guide.
Yeah.
For you to have a much deeper journey within yourself. It's always allowing yourself to say, I don't have to push myself beyond my limits that are going to actually cause me damage.
That's right.
And maybe get myself killed. It's understanding that I need to have options to know that if I fall into danger, I don't have to commit to this path.
Yeah.
Because it's not about pushing myself to the very end. It's about
living.
Yeah.
It's about enjoying it. It's about setting yourself a standard that you've done. And I went beyond any limit I thought I'd ever have. And that gives me a sense of pride and satisfaction that I know I can do it. And it became a journey not about self-destruction, but about self-preservation, and living. And I never used to smile when I thought about living because I always tried to self-destruct. But I think when you've been to places in your head that are very dark and physically that have taken you to places that are very light, it's great. You choose the physicality and the light over the dark. But and it doesn't have to be 100 or 200 miles a day. It can be a mile a day or 2 miles a day. It's just about getting out there and experiencing life and living life and just being kind. But the journey, the stories, the people I've met, fantastic.
Well, let's take the audience on your journey from the very beginning and let's go through. I'm going to break it down country by country, I think, because as someone who's not travelled much of the Americas, only Canada and USA, it'll be great to hear the stories of the people and things you've witnessed along the way. So let's take us back to the very start. First of all, I'm really curious as how does someone pack their life away to go on an adventure so big that it's just beyond just a couple of weeks of holiday, which they might have. You have dogs.
Yeah.
You have belongings.
Yes.
You had a car.
All got sold.
A house.
That's all with my son and my wife. I'm now a bit of a transient migrant now. I live back in Sussex, where I was brought up. Mm-hmm. So I'm just staying with a friend right now until I can. I've got really no excuse to buy a car because I can cycle as far as I need to go, really. I sold my van, which I loved, and my car, and that funded the trip. And the whole purpose of doing that was so that I could raise money for the NSPCC. And it didn't become about sponsorship. It didn't become about, oh, look what we've done for this man. It became solely and purposely about mental health and child abuse and what a survivor can do, not what a victim can do. And I wanted it to be about the ride and not about someone saying, hey, look, we've supported this guy with whatever. So I sold everything I had.
So you shipped out
5150, my bike, yeah.
With a load of belongings.
Yeah, in a box. And
which all had to fit on the bike, I imagine.
Everything, just one rucksack, 5150 in the box with everything. And I flew to Fairbanks in Alaska.
Yeah, and you had a few days in Fairbanks.
Yeah, I had about 5 days, I think, in Fairbanks, and just to acclimatise. Went for a few test rides, making sure everything's okay. Went into a cafe, a 24-hour family-run cafe, recognised by one of the girls in there, Lucy, and said, "You been here before?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Were you in 2019?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm back again." And she remembered him. It was really comforting, and it was a welcome. It was just, welcome back, and it was just nice, and it felt familiar. It felt friendly. And on the, I think it was the 30th, cycled down to the bus station, because Prudhoe Bay is 500 miles north. It's past the Arctic Circle, so 500 miles north of Fairbanks on the Dalton Highway.
It's a long journey.
It's a long journey. So yeah, got up to Prudhoe Bay, felt like going home. It's just brilliant. The scenery and the wildlife, the isolation, and got prepped. The following day, I went up to, because you can't get to the, I think it's the Arctic Ocean, because it's an oil field, it's all protected and you need special permission. So you can go on a little bus tour. So there was myself and 2 others. So we went up. I took the front wheel of 5150 to dip it in. They wouldn't let me take him altogether. So went up, dipped it in the Arctic Ocean.
It must have been important for you to see that ocean as a very starting point of the journey.
The next time I'd see the ocean would be in Mexico. And I love being by the sea. So yeah, actually dipping my toes in the water at the top and dipping my toes in the water at Ushuaia were very, very important for me. Top of the world, bottom of the world. And so then, I was up, went back to the motel, got the bike prepped, got ready, couldn't sleep that much that night.
So the next day you were off?
Next day I was off.
Wow.
And you start, Dead Horse is the town at the top of the world.
Apt name. How do you process what's ahead of you on that when you start? You've got 19,000 miles. You've got a distance that's beyond even comprehension.
I don't think about it. I don't think about the mileage. I think about where I'm going that day. The end route, it's great. But I don't take anything for granted. I don't think you can say, I'm going to get there. I just think I want to get there.
What I find really interesting about the start of your journey is even you've talked about the experience you have on Route 66, doing this part of this journey anyway years before, and crossing Australia. As a seasoned bike tourer who kind of is experienced in like these long distance journeys, you've very much struggled in the first week.
Yeah, I got, even though I'd done this before, I got heat stroke. I was about 3 days in. I was 50 miles out of Fairbanks. There was a bit of a heat thing going on. I got heat stroke. And I got to the Dalton Highway sign and thinking, I've just put my tent up here because I ain't got anything in me. But it was here. And I was hallucinating. I was thinking traffic cones were people and I was dizzy. I thought, I'd just put my tent down and sleep tonight. And something said to me, and there was a bunch of tourists just come up to see the Dalton Highway. So I said, look, I need a lift into Fairbanks. I think I'm going to pass out if I don't. And that was part of the self-preservation coming in. Look, if you stay here, you're probably not going to be here tomorrow. So
this is going backwards as well into Fairbanks.
It was going. Yeah, I got the lift into Fairbanks off a track, and so that was a 50-mile ride in, and I did make that up. I don't like cheating on the distance, so I had to make the miles up, which I did a bit later on in the ride. And then I needed a couple of days off because I was dehydrated, and the irony is I was in the heat. And I'm an experienced cyclist, and it caught me out. It just caught me out.
Was that just because it was your first week, so you weren't really? It was the gears hadn't really been able to get going.
No, I think that's right. Because I was in much hotter temperatures as I got down into thing, and I think it was just acclimatization as well, as much as anything else.
Does that show the importance of when you start a long journey like this is actually to really ease into it and that actually you're going to be doing big miles, but don't try and do them early on. Is there something to say about that?
There could be something to say about that. Yeah. I mean, if common sense would say, do your 50 or 60 milers.
Yeah.
My first day was 140 or something odd like that. And it's about 500 miles into Fairbanks, and that was a 3-day ride. So. Yeah, I think you can ease into it, but it's part of pushing, which was the whole intention for me, was to push. But yeah, you learn. You do learn. You're never too old to learn that. So I got into Fairbanks. I think I had 2 days off.
I think it was 3. Yeah,
3 days. Yeah,
it was a fair amount of time off, considering it was just only you'd only been cycling for 5 days.
Well,
it just showed how much your body was struggling.
It was whack. That's right. Yeah, because my daughter Amelia helped book some accommodation, and someone had trolled me at the top of the world and sent me some pretty nasty messages. And that mentally sort of screwed me up. And I was actually ready to call the ride. I was ready to just say, right, just get me a flight back. I've had enough. And that was it. I'd only got to Fairbanks.
And that was something that was completely external to where
It was
you
external
were
to where I was.
and
It
what
was-
you were focused on.
It was someone trying to impose their negativity onto me. And that was tough, because this ride was everything for me.
Yeah.
This was the start of a new life. And they were trying to stop me doing that. And there was two people. There was, my daughter and a very good friend of mine, Chantal. They just sent me a couple of, just some small words. Don't give up. You could do it.
Had you shared these problems with them for them to give you that support?
I just said, look, I've been trolled, and I'll just get me a flight back. I don't care. And so Amelia booked me a couple of nights accommodation and I stayed in a hostel. And that was quite good because over the couple of days that I needed to get my head straight and get rid of this troll out of my head, because it was there, whenever someone's negative to you, generally it's their imposition. It's they're trying to control you with their negativity. And just ignore it. That's their issue. That's not yours. That's their issue. And it took me a couple of days to reboot that. And then I left Fairbanks in the rain. So the irony is I got sunstroke and then I left in the rain. And I got 100 miles in and I sent a text to the people I stayed with my box. Burn the box. I'm not coming back. So I knew as soon as they'd burnt the box, there was no turning back. And they burnt it. And that was great. And then I was on my way. So from Fairbanks, it was game on.
Yeah. Then you started bashing out 100-mile days consecutively.
Yep.
Through all sorts of weather.
Yep.
How do you manage the weather out on the bike? You've got wind, you've got rain, you've got hail. You had thunderstorms.
I've had pretty much everything you can throw at me.
What stops you?
Nothing. Nothing stopped me yet.
Does it just slows you down?
Just slows me down. The wind was interesting. Well, the heat, the wind, all of it are they're just parts of the journey. The wind I look at, I started to try and not look at the wind as an enemy. I tried to look at it as a friend. It was just trying to push me as a bit of resistance. I thought, well, okay, you're trying to slow me down a bit today. Well, I'll just go with it. So I just keep my head down on the drops, on the aero bars, and just try not to get too wound up about it. Just accept it for what it is. It's wind, it's rain, it's sun. Just accept it for what it is. And you take precautions. You do. You put your waterproofs on. And just go carefully. Make sure you got your lights on. You can be seen. And if you're doing 10 miles an hour, in 10 hours, you've done 100 miles. And there were days when I was too hot and might have done short of 70 milers or something like that. In Canada, there was a Mucho Lake and it was quite hilly. And I was planning to do a 120-mile ride. It ended up as 80-something at Mucho. And I actually left Mucho Lake to make a break for Toad River. I got about 5 miles out of Mucho Lake and thought, no, this isn't going to happen. So I turned around, found the campsite, took stock, and got up the next day and pushed on another 100 miles.
So there must be something to say about how you manage a schedule so that you're in tune with what your body, what you know you can do, and when you know you need to stop, because it's important to be sustainable across months.
I knew I had a long time to go. And I thought, well, I could make these miles up. So, I wanted to try and average 100 miles a day, which would bring me in at 140 days for doing one way, which I was pretty much pretty near it, really. And there was days when I got 140 miles in, 150 miles, 200 miler, and a 200-mile day, well, that's 2 days. Or that's, several days of 90 milers or whatever. So you start, as soon as you go over 100 miles, you get 101 miles or 110, you start to get miles in the bank. That's how I would look at it. So those were bonus days. It takes a while to make a day up, but you can make them up. So if I had an 80 miler, I could make that up in a couple of days, which is fine. So, but it was just being sensible.
You're not long in Alaska before you then approach Canada. You're camping out with bears.
Camping out with the bears, which was great.
With your bear spray.
With my bear spray.
I think it's here, reading your blogs, it's kind of where you actually started to really see the kindness of strangers, being a tourer. And I think you stayed with someone and you left your water bottle with them and they drove 30 miles to return it.
I'd left my camelback. I said, look, I'll turn back and come and get it because I thought I might need, I said, no, don't turn around. So they just came and found me on the road and wished me luck again.
It's like less, it's probably like 40-minute drive for them. Would it
Yeah. The roads are pretty good there.
But that shows the kind of the willingness of people to help someone who's passing through, who's just a stranger.
Just to help. And I think when you live in a wilderness, they understand the isolation and what it takes to survive in something like that. And and they're very prepared to help. And that's enlightening.
Yeah.
And I remember where they turned up, because I was just riding by the lake, and there was just at the side there was a beaver making a house. Just at the side of the lake, and I'm thinking, and then all of a sudden my camelback turns up. Rock and roll.
You don't get that experience in the centre of a city somewhere.
No. It's an irony, really. You would have thought in civilized cities you'd get help, but generally it's every man for himself in a city. Whereas when you're in the country and people respect how difficult it is, you get more kindness.
These were people you were staying with.
Yeah.
You balanced, I guess, in the North America at least, you balanced your time between camping out and campgrounds, maybe a hotel or motel, and also staying with. Would it have been people that you might have met along the way?
Not so much met along the way. The guys in Canada, they were friends of a friend of a client.
Right.
And they just said, oh, he's coming over.
Nearby, yeah.
Yeah. And they said, put him up.
One thing as a cycle tourer will know is that you probably want to get out fairly early.
Yes.
To beat the heat.
Yeah.
If you're traveling through hotter weather, but also just to get your ride done in daylight so you can...
I think daylight riding is sensible. You don't want to be... Because you can't see what's on the road in front of you in the dark, even with the best lights in the world.
You're just talking about hallucinating.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that position where...
No, you just need to be a bit careful. And you don't know what's on the road. And at night time, even though you might be lit up by a Christmas tree, sometimes you don't know who's driving the car behind you.
Mm-hmm. Well, staying at a motel or staying through the kindness of someone who's put you up for the night... You want to get off early in the morning, sometimes before breakfast.
Yep.
But you also need to maybe balance when there's a free breakfast there to nab some food, or when someone is being kind enough to offer you their place. And so how do you balance the need to get out on the road, but also being polite when you're in hospitality of someone who's opened the doors for you?
The hospitality, they were cyclists, they're outdoor people. They knew the need for me to get up.
So they were up early?
No, they had a downstairs. Apartment room, so I could make my own way up. So I had something to eat with them when I got there, and then I was out early doors, and they were, so I could leave without disturbing anyone. But I was more focused. I knew I could get food on the road at that point, so my focus was really to get riding, and then get the food later. Because I always find if I eat too early or just before, I can't ride very well. I'm too full. And mentally, I need to get going. I think once I start the day, then I'm in control.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also conversations with people can sometimes go on longer than you want them to. So, I just get away when I can.
Yeah.
And camping, putting all your equipment away can take half an hour, 45 minutes before you're even on the road. So, you have to be up super early to get that done. And I'd always try and finish as soon as I could, because then I know I'd have time to unwind, go and get some food, get washed, get showered, and then ready for the next day.
Yeah, the time off the bike is also important, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. I took more this time than when I was in the 2019 ride, because I knew I was going to be away for longer. And last time I just took my cycle shoes, but this time I took my trainers, so at least I could go for a walk and run if I wanted to run, or, instead of just wearing cycle shoes all the time, which can be, they're cycle shoes, they're not walking shoes.
Yeah. So you passed through Canada. I think on one of your final days through, you hit 300 kilometers, which would have been your 212.
212 miles, yeah.
12 hours, rain, hail, thunder.
It was certainly a day that would kill most people.
But what kept you going on that day? You just felt so good on the bike?
I felt good. I had a bit of the wind was on my flank as well, so I had a bit of wind assist. And it was great. It was a challenge to get through the hail, and I could see the storm. And it was a almighty downpour, and it was painful. And then the rain really started. So I'm sheltering under some sort of bush, and the cars are stopping because they couldn't see where they were going. So I was riding in zero visibility. I thought, is a car stopped? Oh, he stopped. Might want to give me some help, So I went up and said, are you all right? He said, yeah, I just couldn't see where I was going, and thought I'd better stop on the road. I thought, fair enough. And he wasn't interested. He was but the gullies were full, the rain was running. Someone had abandoned their motorbike, and then it started to clear. And just as I left, I'd never been wet. You couldn't have got more wet. And just as I'm riding to carry on, a guy did stop in his truck and said, can I give you a lift? You shouldn't be riding in this. I said, you're going the wrong way. He said, I can take you for some shelter. I said, no, it's fine, thanks. I'm wet now. It's not going to make any difference.
Most people would have wanted to stop
Yeah.
As soon as their body's wet, they'd be like, right, get the taxi, get me to somewhere where I can get dry and warm.
I was tempted, but I just needed to keep going. And it felt like a challenge. It felt like God was trying to stop me. It was a God killer day. It was, we're going to stop you. You're not going to get going again. And that for me was the mental challenge, saying that, you can either stop or you can go. And when I got going again, I felt pretty good. And I was about 150 miles into what's called Vulcan County. And only in Canada or America, and they've got a model of the Starship Enterprise. They got the Vulcan Center. They all these things relative to Star Trek. There was a couple of girls outside the station, outside this Vulcan Center, trying to do selfies of each other. I said, look, I'll do a photograph. So I did a photograph of both of you. And they said something funny to me. I said I was going to this next town, which was 50 odd miles. And I didn't have the heart to tell them. They said, oh, you're really hardcore doing 50 miles. I didn't have the heart to tell them I'd just done over 150, but it gave me confidence to, that they had in me to tell me how good I was. I thought, well, let's crack on then. So I went and pushed on, and biggest day on the bike I'd had. So that was good. No, it gave me confidence of what I could do.
It felt like that's when it was almost like it was, everything had clicked into place.
Felt a turning point.
You pop across to the USA on day 29. This is collectively on your journey. The US Border Patrol
they were very interesting.
Took you inside, but looks like you passed through okay.
Well, they were interesting. I didn't see the stop sign for where I needed to stop. So I pulled right up to the booth, and I just thought it was quite comical because generally people I find are pretty good. But this border guard obviously took against me. And he said, didn't you? I said, no, I didn't see the stop sign. Here's my passport. And I said something. About, where are you from? I said, I'm from England. Can't you tell from my accent? And he said, right, you're going inside. I thought, okay. I was polite, but he didn't like it. And he just wanted to stamp his authority. So I went in, all the other guys in the building, and they were very polite. It was just this one person that just wanted to stamp their authority. And I actually thought that was quite funny. I didn't say anything. I behaved myself. You don't wind people up like that.
Yeah.
And,
you have a journey to go on as well.
I've got to get somewhere. I've got to go.
I guess when you look at all the countries you're crossing as well, you think about all the potential problems you might have at border patrols. Perhaps the USA was not one that you'd think it would be.
No, but he was quite aggressive and authoritative. Well,
just the wrong person on the wrong day.
Wrong day, wrong person, and but that's what it was.
So now we're a full month into your tour. The temperatures are hotting up. We're now in September, passing through the USA.
Yeah. I
think it's not until day 37 that you actually have your first real day off from cycling.
That was into Lyman.
From having some time off for the first week. I think you'd mentioned the day before that you had suicidal thoughts when out on the bike.
Yeah.
And you talked about how a year ago, previously, you were having them hourly.
Yeah.
How did you manage that mentality of being on the bike in that situation when you're on your own? Did you just know that you had to stop and take a day off?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. It was a tough day and it was hot. And I think that was into Lyman where I took the first day off. And it was super hot. It was well over 100 degrees. And I started to run out of water. I mean, all of this was good testing for South America. And it was ironic. I got to what was called the last chance crossing. And I'd run out of water. And Lyman was still 30 miles away. And I thought there might be something at the last chance crossing to get water, and there wasn't. And there was a couple from Colorado on their way back. They'd been up dirt biking with one of their sons. And they gave me 2 litres of water. They said, here you go, on your way. And what kindness was that? I mean, that kept me going. That kept me alive, really. And the suicidal thoughts, you have to process that. You just have to think, well, I'm either going to crack on or I'm not. When you've got jobs to do, when you've got a right to do, I really try and focus on that. And I was tired. I was apocalyptically tired. And I got into Lyman quite late at night because my energy was spent, through the heat. And I found out the next day it was the hottest day on record that Lyman had ever had. And they were going through a heat wave. So I'd cycled in 100-degree heat plus for 145 miles. And I needed a day off. It was really the start of me saying, I don't need to punish myself anymore. When you need to take a day, take a day. And it was a good thing I did.
Yeah.
I managed to reset.
I think this might have been a day as well when you caught up with your therapist. Is it Niall?
Niall, yeah.
From Ashdown Counselling. You said you'd you'd struggled initially to find a therapist that suited you, and you found Niall, and it's really helps you process everything in your past. Going on a bike tour and leaving that world behind and focusing on this one, but you still kept a connection with him and still had sessions with him.
I still have sessions. I still will have sessions because part of the PTSD it's shadows. Whereas before it was a very bright light, now they're shadows to what they were. And he helps. He's helped enormously, and a lot about therapy is trust as well, in who you trust, and they can see they can see the place you need to get to, but you can't see it yourself. And I think you need to talk about things, because where you bottle things up, the trauma is held within the body, and so when something traumatic happens to you, it affects you physically as well. And trying to release that trauma and re-engage how the mind thinks into a more positive way. And you realize you've led a life with the trauma that happened to you, not knowing who you really are, because you've been in denial for so many years, decades. And I think, again, the cycling is something that helped me define who I am and find who I am. So the suicidal thoughts were there, and they kept coming back, and they were there, but they get less and less. And suicide is about taking control, because sometimes when you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do, that's the only thing you've got left in your power. That's the only thing you've got left of your own control, because no one else can control that. No one else can influence that. It's just yourself. And that's the last point of control you've got. And riding and cycling and being positive, that's about me taking control over my suicide and my thoughts. And always trying to wake up the next day and thinking, well, it could be a good day today. And generally it was. I'd have bad days on the bike where I didn't want to go on. Someone please steal my bloody bike. Just go.
Yeah, looking for an excuse to finish, yeah.
Yeah, looking for an excuse to stop. But having Niall on side, and I needed a couple of sessions while I was going down, just to help keep me rebalanced. So even though you can sort of push these big miles out, I need help. I needed help, and I still get it.
This is all part of the balance, I suppose. That kind of, your tour kind of is a great metaphor for life, almost, about needing to find where you can push yourself, but also where you can learn to stop and relax and reset.
Absolutely right.
And having consistency in everything as well, so that knowing that you're not going for too long without any one of these parts.
Structure. And getting that through, getting through the ride and realizing, and again, it was about limits and about knowing when to be kind to yourself and when not having to push. I wasn't out to set world records or anything. I was out to push myself. And I was out, and at the start, I was out to destroy myself, with the return. But eventually, you evolve and you discover who you are and what you can do. And that was all part of it.
So you get to Mexico, you're drinking a huge amount of fluids, still doing your 100 plus miles roughly a day. Day 52 of your tour, your first puncture.
Yeah.
In 5,000.
It's not bad, is it?
Miles. I can't believe that. Does that go? I mean, what tyres were you using? This is clearly like some kind of...
I've got some Schwalbe...
marathons.
Marathons, yeah.
Much well-trusted touring tyres.
Yeah.
And clearly that you are a cycling advert for that. If you've managed to go 52 days, over 5,000 miles without a single puncture.
Yeah, it was annoying.
Annoying because you feel like you should have had...
No, it was comical in a way that I was thinking, please don't get it. Because when you get a puncture on a touring bike, as you know, you have to take all your panniers off, you have to get the wheel off. And I thought, oh, crikey, here we go. But it was all right. I thought I got away pretty lightly after 5,000 miles.
Yeah, you'll take that, yeah.
It is what it is. It is what it is. And then I carried so many spare... I took quite a few tubes with me, and I came back with 3 unused tubes, and...
You use slime tubes?
I used slime tubes, and I also had ordinary... I bought Schwalbe tubes that were slightly oversized for the bike, for the tyres, but only on the basis that they were thicker rubber. So, and I used tie liners as well. But slime tubes are pretty good. They do give up. They do give up the ghost eventually. But just for the odd splinter and things, they're very good. But if you get anything too big, I had a shard of glass go in and cut part the tyre. So I always carry a bit of super glue with me. So what I do is change the tyre, fix a puncture, pump the tyre up. And as the crack opens on where the shard of glass is, I slip some super glue, let the tyre down a bit.
I've done the same, actually, Just
and it helps protect the tyre.
Yeah, I'm not sure mine works so much well. I think also I learned that the new kind of, once our money changed into plastic, like a £5 note or something, you could put that on the inside of a tyre.
No, I never knew that.
Saw that on the internet once, and it came in, I needed it on a bike ride, and I was really excited to be like, right, let me get my fiver out. I can fix this now. And it just gets you home, basically. It's enough. And you could probably ride further, but it's enough to get you home if you've got a crack in your tyre.
Just get home.
Yeah.
Just get home, change it. So, 5,000 in the first puncture. I did pretty well. Yeah.
What was it like crossing into Mexico? I imagine it's a lot different than North America.
It is. You go from a wealthy country into not such a wealthy country. And as soon as you ride in, you feel the poverty. It's a less wealthy country. And I'm always on my guard a bit, then, because Mexico can be dangerous. It's got a high kill rate, but I suspect that's more to do with this drug gangs and things. But I always found I found most people wherever I went were really good.
Was it from here on that you stayed only in hotels?
Yeah, I made the call then because Mexico could be quite dangerous. There was one hotel, I knew it was because I stayed in it on the last journey, but at night there was gunshots. And, and I just thought, well, I've made the right call to stay in hotels. And that was all through Central America as well.
Yeah.
I thought, no, I'm not going to risk it. And that was pretty much all the way through South America, apart from, the Atacama and sleeping at some of the gas stations as well.
Yeah, places where there wasn't much around. Yeah.
I felt safe in Argentina and Chile. I felt pretty safe, but some of the Central Americans, I thought, no, it was white, and they were hostels. They weren't expensive. I thought, it's I'm going
for your safety. It's worth
safety. For 40 quid a night, or some case 20 quid a night. Not even that. Some of them, it was worth staying in. And doing big distances, you need to keep clean and showered off.
For a long journey, you don't want to be sleeping unclean. Yeah.
No. So
for a short journey, you can manage. You can manage
I would say for a short journey, probably 3 days is maximum.
Yeah, I think that's been my max.
Yeah. Otherwise you get a bit smelly and it gets a bit painful.
Yeah. So then October comes round, you cross into El Salvador.
Yeah.
And it was in El Salvador when you thought actually you would quit this ride and it would finish. Your rear tyre had given up, you'd fixed several punctures, you'd witnessed a dog taking its last breath.
It was horrid. Absolutely horrid. Yeah.
And you didn't think you'd make it to Honduras, which was the next country along the tour.
The poverty, it was poverty, and the life is cheap, and seeing the dead dogs and being a dog owner, and I think mentally that's part of the reason I wouldn't be able to do the return through, because I struggle with that, and in Mexico there was a fresh dog killed and blood and things, but then when I went through the Central American, it got worse, and then there was dogs eating other dogs, and there was just everything across the road. It was carnage, and they don't care, drivers. They just treat it like rubbish, and they don't care. They just run it over, and no one cares, and that really hurt, to actually see all of that. The value of life was so cheap, and I could barely take that, could barely deal with it. But I just had to sort of crack on and do the best I could and get through El Salvador, and this is when I started to get to gas stations where they'd have the shotguns. I started to feel a bit uneasy. They'd have shotguns, particularly, going on to the following countries. And I started to feel a bit unsafe. And on the last day in El Salvador, what I thought was the last day, because I managed to get to the sea, I took a bit of a detour and found some more great characters, and there were some really good laughs and some fun guys. Found the sea, and it was great just to smell the sea. It was fantastic. Got to walk on the beach. The sea was warm and stuff. And then that day I left, and there must have been something in the ice and the drink that I had. And I met a couple of guys from America going off trekking to the volcanoes, and I got food poisoning. And it was a big old day. And this is the day before I was going to go into Honduras. And it was fortuitous that I got food poisoning because I was laid up for 2 days in a hotel. Didn't want to let 5150 up, but I insisted, and they managed to keep me in the room. And it was quite a good hotel. It was for El Salvador, I think it was about £70 a night, which was good. So I stayed there, got rid of the food poisoning, but in the ensuing time, there was a hurricane that had gone through.
Storm Julia passing through,
Yeah,
which would have made your journey impassable.
Well,
right?
I'd have probably gone out. It wouldn't have stopped me going out,
Right.
but the food poisoning made me stop. So I had a couple of days, and thankfully I did. But on the ride into the last day, I pulled into a gas station. I was going up a hill and it was raining, and I just needed to stop. I just needed some rest. And there was a guy with a security guy with a shotgun, made me feel unwelcome. I thought, well, here we go. So I felt a bit. This is me starting to feel uneasy, which was why I've had enough of this.
Right.
But got to the hotel, and fortunately, I got food poisoning, which stopped me. And then started to feel a bit better after taking it was 2 nights there, but 1 day off. So but I needed it.
Yeah.
I needed it.
It's almost like looking at like the silver lining behind
Damn right. It was.
shit that happens to you.
It was literally the shit that stopped me.
Yeah.
And I needed it.
Because knowing about your mentality and your fortitude to kind of push through all weathers,
I'd have gone on.
that you might not have understood the power of the storm you were in.
No.
You could have got injured.
Yep.
Or worse.
Yeah, I'd have gone on. There's no question.
Yeah.
No question I'd have gone on. But I was pleased it stopped me.
There's a greater force out there
Yes.
above all of us. And
Yeah.
might not understand what it is or
No.
who it is, but
Fate played a hand.
thankfully you got back on the road after a few days reset through Honduras. I think you just spent a day in Honduras.
Yeah, didn't like it. Felt uneasy.
Yeah. Into Nicaragua.
Yes.
Border Patrol. You were told you needed to notify the country 2 or 3 days before entering, which I think you said was not true.
No.
I think you managed to pay them.
Well, I knew what was coming. You don't let them know what you're thinking, but I was actually quietly laughing to myself because I knew what was happening. And
It's almost if you want to have one of these experiences.
it was funny. It was funny. I mean, it was stressful because with the anxiety of what's going on. And I mean, they could have stopped my ride. They could have stopped it. And I said, no, I need your passport. I said, okay, I'm going to go talk to my boss. So he told me to go and sit down. 5150 and I were in the customs, and then he sort of came over to me and he said, come back with me. We're going to let you through. I said, and I thanked him profusely. And I knew what was going. So I put $10 in my passport. And he said, would you like to share your gratitude for the help we've given you? I said, yes, it's in my passport. And,
so you preempted what was
I preempted what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I gave him $10. And I don't think people give them $10. I think it's maybe $2 or $3 or $5. I thought, no, blow it, just give him 10. And all of a sudden he became my best friend. But he couldn't do enough for me.
Money talks, eh?
And I knew it was coming. It was quite nice to be right, and it was just corrupt.
Yeah.
It was corrupt.
Yes.
And that's what it was.
There's different ways you can handle a situation like that.
You either get grumpy and angry or you just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And
to
you
understand that in certain parts of the world.
That's what it is. For me to get through Nicaragua for $10, I don't care.
At this point in your journey, you're 73 days in, it's mid-October. I think you preempted certain things that you might need for your bike.
Yep.
So this is again is, I suppose, another good touring hack, actually. You had a mission control. Back in the UK.
Yep.
Who was helping you with a lot of your logistics. And they were going to send some parts out to you because they're just very hard to find.
They are. You can't get the bits and pieces that you need, particularly on the bike, with the gearing and things and the tyres. So I had a chat with Mission Control, Steve. He got the rear cassette. He sent that to Ian, also known as the King. He was a fantastic friend, brilliant. He organised the tyres, got it all packaged up and sent out to the sailing company who were taking me from Panama to Colombia. And when I got to Colombia, everything was waiting for me.
I suppose something to say about kind of maybe not to be too stubborn about how unsupported your unsupported journey is knowing that you still need to
need help,
friends and connections and ask for help when you need it.
Damn right.
There's nothing about
the bike wouldn't have survived. I wouldn't have got on. Chain was going and slipping and stuff. And so you need to accept that.
So then you cross into Costa Rica, a much easier immigration. I've never been, but I've heard it's a beautiful country.
Costa Rica is just a place to go. Much more wealthy. It was at this time the climate had changed from, the heat of the deserts in Mexico and America getting into the tropics now. So you're basically going through jungles, and the humidity was unbelievable. You're just going through fluids all the time. But again, it's warm. You're going through banana plantations, palm trees. You see, I mean, at one point I actually saw a dead sloth at the side of the road, which was really, I thought, oh, come on, these are, but so I'd swapped sort of dead dogs for sloths but it was, Costa Rica, and it was very, very green, very lush, and near the coast for about a day or something, and that was refreshing.
Yeah,
near the coast.
You still had your bear spray on you.
I did, yeah. That sort of broke down.
What happened?
Well, I stopped keeping it on. Yeah, I'm pleased you read that bit. That is so bloody painful. My God,
I've never smelt it, but I imagine it's not a nice thing to.
It's painful. What had happened is I stopped keeping it on the handlebars because where I kept things evolved, and I started putting it in the back pocket. And of course, where I was sweating, it started to corrode the bottom of the bear bottle.
Okay.
The bear spray. This had happened over weeks. Then I sat down on, there was roadworks, that's right, there was roadworks that were going on. So I sat down on the curb. And what happened then, the bear bottle clinked or hit the side of the curb, and all of a sudden it got a pinprick and it started spraying. And it went down the back of my legs, got some on my hands. And I thought, God, what do I do? So I threw it quickly into the hedge. Mm-hmm. And by crikey, I've never been so burnt in my life.
And this is, I don't understand what bear spray is. Is it like a kind of pepper spray?
It's
type?
pepper spray, yeah. It's pepper spray. And the irony is I got it for protection, but it bloody well hurt, and but I'd corroded it, with it just being in my back, my back cycling pocket all the time. And that took, I would say, a good 10 days to get off my skin.
Wow.
Good 10 days. It was still stinging after 10 days. So just be careful of it. It's dangerous stuff. Yeah.
You end up cleaning yourself with what turned out to be your clean pair of boxers.
I did.
Which is not something you planned at the time. But
it's something I didn't wear afterwards.
Yeah.
Because that would have been mightily inconvenient.
Then we pass into Panama.
Yeah.
Getting close to, I guess, a kind of halfway point in your journey.
I think Panama was, for me, I did a little video of that. And where I'd been pushing, I could have either pushed harder and got an earlier ferry across to Colombia, or slow down and got the later ferry. So I had the choice of pushing on or slowing down. I made the call to slow down a bit because I'd lost so much weight at this point. I was really quite emaciated. Just through pushing. I had no reserves left. So made the call to slow down, get to Colombia, and I think I had 4 or 5 days in Colombia before the boat crossing. Mm-hmm. And I just spent the time there getting 50 because the rear rack had broken, so I had to fix that, and that lasted about 1,000. Well, it was still going, but it broke 1,000 miles before I got into Panama.
Yeah.
And then that was a rest and recoup.
So you needed to cross what's the
Darien Gap.
Darien Gap, which is I guess the only part of the Pan American highway which doesn't really exist. There's no actual road that kind of travels through.
You can cross. It's jungle. You need to, but it's one of the most dangerous because drug smugglers. Yeah. You go in there, you're like this.
And it will slow you down by probably weeks.
You'd probably die if you went through there.
Right.
Thrill seekers go in, they don't come out.
Yeah.
It's just stupid. Don't go there.
It's not really the official part of the route.
No.
So you had to either fly across or get the boat.
And I made the choice to get the boat because I wanted to sort of stay land-based if it was much land-based as I could. And the boat was the right way. And I don't really like sailing, but I just thought it'd be another reason to sort of try and break something I'm not very good at, which is sailing. So I spent I think 3 or 4 days on the boat. Yeah,
in close confinement with a lot of other adventure types who were making the same passing.
Well, there were sort of students on there year round. There was a couple of older guys, couples, and but it was a good experience. It was good. I felt like the grandfather of the boat. 5150 was strapped to the side of the thing, strapped at the first floor, strapped to the side of the boat, and I was very cautious. I had 2 pieces of rope, and I said, are you sure that's safe? Oh no, we've done it all before. And I said it's a $10,000 bike, and then after I said that, they went up and put more rope on it.
Right. Yeah.
I think they sort of realised
worth a few dollars more of rope.
Yeah. So they strapped me. He was fine, and I was just stuck in this little box for 3 days, and and it was at this point I'd really been with people, and I thought I struggled a bit. I really struggled, so I kept myself to myself, and they respected that. They respected that. It wasn't personal. I couldn't jump off the side of the boat that they were doing because I was for fear of breaking anything or spraining a foot or arm. So I was restricted in what I could do.
It must be so hard for your body as well to adapt from cycling these 100-mile days and then suddenly having to be somewhere where you can't even walk.
It did start to sort of become difficult. I mean, in Panama, I was on the cycle machine every day in the hotel.
Which is what I find crazy, is even on your days off, you still went to the gym.
Yep.
To do some hours on the gym bike.
Yep.
I guess that's purely just to keep your legs spinning, to keep the muscles, the twitch going.
To keep the lactic acid at bay, and it is to keep the legs going. And I felt a bit guilty because I just wanted to sort of keep going, but it was a forced break. And I think I needed it before I hit Colombia.
Yes, this is a good reset. I think you had a total of 10 days off the bike. And it was at this point as well, I think you decided that this was going to be a one-way trip.
Yeah.
Where your original plan was to, you said, finish you off.
Yeah.
To be killed by bike.
Yeah.
In a sense. What did you mean by that?
Well, just ride until I drop.
Were you prepared to even do that? Was this your mentality at the time? Just to for this to be a one-way journey?
It was just a one-way journey. It was the start of a new life, to push myself and probably just end it. Just finish doing something massive.
Let something on the roads decide fate for you.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy mentality to have, but that, I guess, that must stem back from the troubles you were having.
It is. Yeah, it just stems all back to the self-worth. And that's really what I ended up riding for, was the self-worth. Getting to the end. And the mind was sort of playing tricks. You do deserve to do it. No, you don't deserve to do it. You do, you don't. And sort of being pushed and pulled with, the mental sort of thing. It helps you find clarity, really. When you push and pull. Well, for me, when I was pushing all the time, I found out I wanted the self-worth. I didn't want the self-destruction. And that was why I decided to do the one way, because going both ways would have been about destruction, not about self-worth. And I had a conversation with Ian, the king. He was the one that said, look, if you stop now, you've got all the respect from everyone you know. And he said, one way is the right way. You've got nothing left to prove.
Yeah.
Most people couldn't do a day of what you do, let alone day after day. And that started to trigger things into me, thinking, well, perhaps I'm not such a bad bloke. Perhaps I can do this. I don't need to go and punish myself anymore.
It seemed like it took you to kind of travel all that distance to really understand the purpose of your own worth.
Yep.
You said it's important not to break yourself, because then the abuser wins and takes your quality of life away.
They do. And that's any sort of abuse. That could be physical or financial. Don't let people devalue who you really are. You're important. You are really important. And throughout my career, I've worked for people who, not consciously, but subconsciously, work for people who you sort of think won't pay you, and because you don't think you're worth being paid. It's your self-worth is literally non-existent. So you punish yourself, and you make them millions and millions of pounds, and they do very well, and then they don't pay you. You think, well, I told you they wouldn't pay. It's all about sort of beating yourself down. But that's their weakness. That's not mine. That's their weakness, and you have to be aware of that. And it's the same with physical abuse. So don't let them win. Don't give up.
So you discovered this about yourself on this ride.
Yeah.
Very much a kind of almost like halfway point from Panama into Colombia. Unfortunately, you still had many more miles to go.
Well, I did, and it takes me back. I had a conversation with Ashley. I was at university with Ashley, and he said, "Tim, you've got so far to go." I said, "No, I haven't." I said, "I don't think about it like that. I don't think about how far I've got to go. I just think where I'm going. So I don't think about the miles. I just think, right." And it got to a point where I was ticking the countries off, and Woody gets that. Said, another one ticked. Yeah. Tick done.
Yes.
Tick done. Tick done. And it helped to think about it in that context. But there was a lot of miles to go.
So you entered Colombia. This is after your days off.
Yeah.
You're now on day 100 of your tour. This is in November. This is a really interesting story, I think, actually, because it was a time when your chain had snapped, which I think you managed to fix.
Yes.
But then your rear derailleur broke, which is beyond a repair which you could do on the road.
About 10 metres after, I'd literally fixed the thing, and 10 metres on. And the front derailleur never go. They're probably the most reliable bit.
The front derailleur, yeah.
It was the front derailleur, just the pivot snap. So here we go. So it was stuck in bottom ring, and fortunately I had good reception.
Yeah.
I could either go backwards to a bike shop, which was 50 miles away. I never went back.
This is what I think is so important, especially for someone who's also got experience with bike tour, is you had this choice. You could go back to somewhere which you knew existed, a bike shop, which you'd obviously either passed or you'd seen on, or you could go forwards with the broken bike
to another bike shop,
to the unknown.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't know where that bike shop was or where it'd be.
I had an idea there was going to be a bike shop there, I lost reception. I got to the other town.
But the mentality of
just go forward.
Wanting to, always go forward.
Yeah,
never go back.
Don't go back. Because then I'd think, oh, no, I'd failed if I went back. But that's just me. That's just personally.
And then the miles that you have to do again afterwards, and that doesn't sit right in your head.
No, go
the
forward.
Purpose of this tour is always going forward.
Go forward. Yeah, mentally, physically, and that was it. And so I just took the choice, went forward. It wasn't too far from another town, and I went up and found the bike shop, fixed the bike, got a second-hand derailleur, put that on, and the generosity and kindness that they had was brilliant. Great.
Into Ecuador, passing Quito, second highest city in the world.
Yeah.
Altitude, did that affect you?
A bit. I think because I was becoming acclimatized, Mexico was pretty high.
You were easing into it.
I was easing into it. It's not like going in a car or a bus and you're suddenly going up to, several thousand meters.
Which says something about the way of touring by bike.
Yeah, you do get acclimatized. I mean, there was times when, and I was aware of this. I mean, I just made a simple provision of taking a lot of aspirin with me. And there were times when I was riding and my chest was getting tight, and I thought, well, slow it down. Pop an aspirin, just take your time. And I didn't rush. I deliberately didn't push. I just went at a gentle pace. Even though I was covering some big miles, I just tried to relax into it. And it worked. But getting up to Quito, that climb up there, geez, that nearly killed me. And then as I'm getting towards the top of Quito, I see a woman with a suitcase just trying to go up the hill. And I thought, I'm lucky. I've got 2 wheels. I've got a pair of legs. And then it sort of snaps you out of it.
It's crazy how everything is all relative.
It is relative.
To your position.
It is. And you just it snapshots you back into what you're doing as opposed to everything else that's gone before.
Yeah, you were talking actually earlier about how coming back to the UK and we're in a cost of living crisis, but actually from where you've been in the parts of the world that you've been, your views on what
you need to live.
Yeah.
People just want to live. And we're very, very lucky to live in the country we live. And if you said cost of living to someone living under a piece of plastic with one piece of wood, where life is cheap, they would wonder what you're talking about. And I've got no doubt that people struggle. I mean, I see that. But when you see people who are just struggling from day to day to actually breathe, let alone anything else, for me, it gives perspective. And it also makes you question, what do you really need? Do we fill our life with lots of possessions that we don't really need, or subscriptions we don't really need?
Yeah.
What prioritize?
And I suppose the touring life is such a simple life. You know exactly what you need every day.
Yeah.
Which is fundamentally food, water, and shelter.
Yeah, that's it. And if you can have some good conversations and laughs along the way, life's the better for it. And I'm struggling to sort of really understand it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Being away from it for so many months and then coming back to it.
Which I suppose just show the importance of global adventure, global travel, is how eye-opening it is to see actually what's on your neighbour's fence and beyond, because otherwise you just get this single mindset of just living a certain way, being under the influence of a certain way of living, the media that we consume, just seeing something from one angle, but actually visiting other countries.
You see a broader picture, certainly about people's characters, how they survive, how they live, and how you can then sort of benchmark that about your own country and where you live on your day to day, and very much about how the media sort of pushes that out, and people are controlled by fear. You can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't do this, and I think a lot of that is to do. You can sort of relate that to cycle touring as well. It's going to be dangerous, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. You can never cycle that distance. Well, you can. Yes, there's danger.
Well, you can't cross that country because it's dangerous.
Yeah, but you can do these things, but you just have to be careful in the way you do them. And but don't let fear stop you.
Why should someone tour by bike? Someone is listening to this and they're inspired.
You see the world at a more human pace. You're not isolated, as I said earlier. You're not in an air-conditioned, warm, cozy zone. It's you and the bike and you with the elements. And I think getting out there and seeing and meeting people. When you're on a bike, you've got more opportunity to see and talk and stop. When you're on a car, you're generally going at too fast. You don't see what goes past. You don't see what's at the side of the road. You don't see the person walking the road or anything like that. So it's an experience that you'll never get by any other sort of transport, unless you're walking. I think there's the equipment, the technology now, the support that you can get, security you can get from your devices now, the tracking, there's someone will always know where you are. So don't let that put you off. Don't think you're ever alone, because someone can always find you. And it's great, it's good for you. Yeah, there's going to be wet days and cold days and horrible days, but by crikey, they dissolve when you have a good day, when the sun's running, good temperature, the bike's running brilliantly, and you've got some lovely roads. Couldn't be doing anything better, really.
So, Peru, the next country on the list.
Yeah, probably the most dangerous drivers I've ever had.
You talked about a lot of the litter on the road.
It was filthy. You couldn't pay me to go back to Peru.
Wow.
There was a couple of days when I hit the coast, and I thought, well, this is really what I've been after on the Pan America, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful, but it's a very corrupt country. Everyone's out for themselves. Didn't enjoy it at all. Did not enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there was parts of the scenery, seeing the migrants on the back of trucks, just trying to get somewhere or to get out. And I got hit by the car in Lima, and pretty aggressive drivers, noisy, frenetic. I just wanted to get out of it.
Yeah. You said that you were struggling to maintain the mentality of posting nice photos every day, when the truth was very different to what you were seeing, and you didn't want to post that online.
No, I mean, I think the reality of what I was seeing, I was trying to sort of blog and say, look, this is what it is. And when people were saying nice photos, I don't think they could really sort of perceive what was, so that's why I had to say something. I'm seeing death and carnage and busy, noisy, smelly,
just a completely different way of life.
It's a different way of life, but I thought, well, I didn't really want to post that. I mean, I photographed it, but I didn't want to post it because I found it pretty horrific myself. And I've been around the world a bit, and that was not nice. Just not nice. And the nicest people in Peru that I met were from Venezuela, which was an irony, because Venezuela's struggling has been for quite a few years now, and people got out because the economy has collapsed and it's not good. But Peru, it was dirty. It was just horrid. It was just for me, it was a horrid experience. There's good people there, I'm sure.
And I guess at this point in your journey, you're so now experienced with how to deal with this mentality that you just know that the best thing that you can do in a situation like that is just to continue moving forward.
There is. And there was a bit of light in Peru as well, with a guy called Liam. He saw me from across the road. We saw each other, had a wave. He came running across. I picked up on his positivity. He was happy. He said, look, today's my last day. I'm getting into Lima and I'm going to fly home to Canada. I thought, great. And it gave me a real lift. And he was saying that Chile was different and this and how good Chile was. I thought, well, that's something optimistic to look forward to.
Chile was where you slept outside in the desert on your own in the Atacama Desert.
It was.
It must have been quite the experience.
Yeah, and I slept out a couple of times.
This wasn't a campsite. This was
wild
camping.
Just wild.
It must have been very wild.
It was. It was just me and the wind and the sun. And I was on the periphery. I think, in the Atacama. It's never rained in the Atacama apparently, but it did for me, which was great. And that was just the luck that I had. I found it really funny. So, because I didn't put my tent up, I just rolled my sleeping bag out next to 5150 on the stones, sleep. And then all of a sudden, it was like rain for about a minute. And I thought, oh, come on, please. And then it stopped.
Of all the places in the world, of all the people to do it on,
Atacama Desert.
To be you.
In the Atacama Desert. It was. And it was hilarious. I laughed. I just thought, oh, come on, you haven't. It didn't bother me. I thought it was funny.
And you can't get that experience being in a hotel room.
Nope. And it was great. And I actually slept pretty well.
Then into Argentina.
Well, yeah, Chile into Argentina. Well, I'll tell you a bit about going from San Juan to Atacama to cross over the Jama Pass.
Okay.
And big climb. And I get to the Jama Pass. I'm at over 4,000 meters altitude, so high altitude. A lot of climbing, 100 miles, toughest day I've ever had on a bike. And I went through 2 lightning storms, and there'd been a 3-day weather warning, and it was the 3rd day of lightning, and I thought, it's load of rubbish, and it wasn't. And I went straight into a lightning storm and then another one, and it was so frightening. And I got to a point where I can either be frightened or just accept it for what it is. And if I stopped, there'd be lightning. If I carried on, there'd be lightning. So I carried on, and it was cold. I mean, I was bitterly cold, and the lightning was within about 30 meters of me. It's proper center of the storm stuff. And I wanted to try and get photographs of entering such and such country and all this. And I got to the Argentinian side. I thought, thank flipping goodness for that. But I wasn't going to stop because it was so cold. And I thought there was accommodation at the gas station anyway. That turned out to be closed. But as I got down to the border crossing from Chile into Argentina, and what they call the aduanas, the security man, and there's a 6'6" man mounting security, pulled me straight into his hut. I thought, well, I've done something wrong, but I better go in the hut. So I got in the hut. First thing he did, he got a blanket, put it around me, put the heater on, because he could see I was getting hypothermia. And he called the paramedics.
This is Benjamin.
Benjamin, the fantastic Argentinian. And what a wonderful man. And he stayed in touch. You know, he said, if you get into any issues in Argentina, here's my mobile number. So he gave me his mobile. And he stayed in touch all through Argentina. Do you need any help? You're okay. And I thought, what a welcome to Argentina. So the paramedics came, wrapped me up in things. They then took me to passport control.
You were chaperoned through.
I was chaperoned through with the medics.
What an experience.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant. I mean, what kindness, you know. I mean, I do question whether I get that here, you know. But it was great, and that was a really warm welcome to Argentina, and I loved it.
Well, we've been talking about how things that happen to you on the journey seem like they're happening for a greater reason.
Yeah.
And everything seems like eventually it falls into place.
Yeah.
You were in Argentina in December 2022 on the day of the World Cup final.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
Of all the days.
I know.
To be in a country of Argentina, you were there to witness the winning moments of the World Cup final.
Sam Wonder took them on.
What an energy that must have been.
It was, well, I was sitting in a hotel because I had 2 nights off. I took the day off. I thought, well, it's going to be crazy going on the roads. And everyone was out. It's just the hotel owner and her daughter and myself. And the daughter kept running in and out, couldn't watch it. She was so excited, you know. And it went to penalties, and then all of a sudden they won. I thought, my goodness, thank flipping goodness. And they deserved to win. They really needed that win. I thought, right, I'm going to go out. So I went out, and in the main square, it was just absolutely buzzing, and the energy was fantastic. And I thought, good luck to you.
Yeah,
really.
You're just a passerby.
I was just
passing
going on my
through.
way. That's it.
Just time and circumstance that got you there in that time.
It was brilliant. Loved it.
You spent Christmas in Argentina.
Yeah, Cordoba. Yeah.
A few days off the bike.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve, Christmas Day.
Yeah.
When you set off at the beginning of this journey, were you aware that Christmas Day you'd be?
I'd be on my own, yeah.
Yeah.
That's just
it was always part of the plan.
It was. I was even planning to cycle on Christmas Day, so, but I thought, well, nothing was open. I thought, no, there's no point.
Yeah.
Just take the time off.
Day 167, the end.
Oh, was that the end? Yeah.
This is the total amount of days you were traveling. There was I saw one of your videos you posted. I think you were about 5 kilometers from the end. You'd stopped on the side of a road, kind of like a dirt track road, and you were aware of the distance you were about to travel. You, in the way that you were speaking, you very much were a broken man.
Yep.
You could tell that you were very much at the end of
Yep.
the journey, and that you had not much left, and you just had enough just to get you there.
Yep.
In the background as well, which is it's almost very cinematic. These wild horses just passed by, just graciously in the video.
They're great.
And then you were like, right, let's time to get this done.
Yeah.
And the playlist that you'd been playing throughout your ride, you stuck on, and it came on in the video off your loudspeaker. I think it must have been AC/DC.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And there was something so cinematic about that moment when I was watching this. It almost felt like if your whole journey and story was a film, then it should end here.
Yeah.
We didn't need to see you get to the actual finish point.
No.
Because you'd reached it.
I knew I was there.
But you still had that bit to go. But mentally, physically, everything you had realized, everything that you'd come to achieve. And there was the last few miles that you could just have with yourself. And so it was almost like press play, AC/DC would come on, and then we'd see you ride off into the sunset next to these wild horses. And that would be the end of the film, because we wouldn't need to see you reach that actual physical point.
Yeah.
Because of the journey that you'd gone on to get there.
I'd won.
How did it make you feel, those last kilometers riding into Ushuaia?
Peace. I was at peace. No more anger. Brilliant. Brilliant. I'd ridden it that way. Didn't need anger anymore. And most people just finish in Ushuaia, but Fundamundo, the end of the world, I went to the end of the world. And I went to the end of the world and I got my self-respect. And I was at peace. I was happy. I was just like, I'd had everything thrown at me, including trucks, rain, trolling, a heat stroke, food poisoning, hypothermia, everything that could have been thrown at me. I didn't want it to be an easy ride. I wanted it to be the toughest thing I've ever done, never experienced, and never likely to experience. And when I pushed play, it's good.
You said and you did talk about this. This journey as a mission to finish yourself off, but it ended, and you wrote this. It ended with a desire to survive and make a difference.
Yep, I'm going to do another one because it was a privilege to be called an inspiration, absolute privilege, and I could never accept that before. But actually finishing something so big in one piece. And having someone at the end of the world to wait for me. I think that is the ultimate act of kindness, someone flying halfway around the world so I wasn't on my own. And I think there's a metaphor there to say that you're never on your own. There's always someone there. And it, that saved my life, I think. No, not that it did save my life. And if I can go and do something else and someone takes inspiration from that to not give up, you don't give up. Then I want to do it. That's what I can do. I've actually found what I'm good at, and that's, well, one, I've got my self-respect. Two, I can ride like the devil himself. And life's not over yet, is it? So yeah, bring on the next one.
Tomorrow may well surprise you.
Damn right.
And what you can achieve.
Yeah.
So you've said you wanted to do something.
Yeah.
Again, something different.
Yeah.
What's on the cards?
A triathlon based. I can run.
Okay.
I've done the Paris Marathon a couple of times.
Yeah. How's your swimming?
Not so good.
Something to work on.
But that's part of the challenge.
Yeah.
It's part of the challenge.
And when you say something triathlon based, I'm imagining this is not just going to be a triathlon of
no.
the types that someone would sign up for and compete with other people. This is going to be something.
It'll be a solo unsupported thing. The swimming, there's going to be a fair bit of swimming, so that will need to be supported. But it's a couple of 1,000 miles of riding and a couple of countries to run across, and a bit of swimming and a bit of riding at the end.
It sounds epic.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. But it's what I want to do. It's what I can do. It's not what you can't do.
All good things do have to come to an end, and I think that's a great way to finish it.
Thank you.
Tim, I thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
To talk about this.
Pleasure.
Especially considering that the journey was actually only a little over a month away now, and it's still time that you're decompressing, and
it is.
That will continue. But I wish you well in whatever you're going to do next, which I will excitedly follow.
It's going to be great. I can't wait. Stay training, stay fit.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tom.